The 2D shooter has always maintained an aura of inaccessibility as a genre. It's a cocktail of spirit-shattering difficulty, focus on high scores through repeat gameplay over narrative, and, up until recent years with the advent of digital distribution, relatively low print runs allowing software prices to range from high to exorbitant. These high-proof ingredients form quite the barrier, generating a feeling of reluctance in window shoppers of the genre to take the plunge on these most high-octane, adrenaline-producing of games. My aim of this series is to evaluate the merits of a range of shooters, with a particular view to breaking down and analysing the more unique mechanics that each title brings to the table, such as weapon loadouts and scoring systems. I will also be appraising how well a game caters towards all skill levels of play. As the shooter is a genre with such a vast gulf in the capabilities of players, between novices such as myself and those more seasoned, I believe that it's important to discuss what these games have to offer those of all experience levels. This doesn't just pertain to difficulty, but also what other features are provided, as well as how clearly its systems are communicated to the player. In contrast to my retrospective series, these will be shorter, punchier videos, which is reflective of the genre, and will be produced infrequently as and when I've played through a shooter. With that preamble out of the way, we turn our attention to the entry point in this new series, Ghostblade, with entry point being the key phrase here, as that is the role that this game best serves as. Ghostblade was developed by Huecast Games, a company whose entire catalogue consists of Dreamcast titles, despite the fact that their first release, Dukes, came out in 2009. In defiance of the discontinuation of the console in 2001, enthusiasts and independent developers have created a steady drip of releases for the system, with Huecast certainly not being alone in their production of games on the outdated platform. Initially released in 2015, the version that you are seeing footage of here is from the 2017 HD port, published by 2Dream, which is available on PC and all 8th gen consoles, including the Wii U. The video is captured from the PC version of my 1cc run on the hard difficulty, a misnomer that I shall discuss later, with the optional slowdown turned off. I also played the game, and thus recorded the footage in Tate mode, so I do apologise about the presentation of the gameplay in this video, and will endeavour to fix this in post, as the saying goes. Gameplay in Ghostblade is about as vanilla as it gets, and not the premium Tahitian variety. The less than 20 minutes of action takes place over 5 stages, none of which feature any sort of unique gimmicks or quirks to differentiate themselves. Each stage ends in the expected oversized boss, but there is no stage mid-boss, and the game's antagonist, Evil Shearer, has just the one form actually. Your shot type is tied to whichever specific ship is selected at the beginning of the game, and power-ups can be acquired after destroying specific enemies. The 3 different ships are distinctive by the spread of firepower they produce. They run the gamut from shots focused directly in front of you to spreading out over a wider area, obviously with the caveat of not being so powerful. However, Ghostblade contains a focus fire ability, condensing your shots into a narrow stream, and slowing down your ship to assist with manoeuvring through fields of enemy bullets. It's due to this that I found the spread shot to be the most effective, as even though its general damage output wasn't so great, using focus fire on tougher enemies and bosses pretty much offsets the disparity in its destructive capabilities. This lack of balance across the ships discourages experimentation and replayability, as the only feasible reason to try out the other 2 would be as a self-imposed challenge. Each ship is able to deploy bombs for when the action becomes overwhelming. These are the same regardless of which ship is used, so again, Stella and her spread shot wielding spacecraft are still the way to go. One of the alterations made between the Dreamcast release and this port is in the vastly improved bomb animations. Originally, using a bomb caused the game to activate a hilariously jarring screen wipe animation that not only looked awful, but also caused the game's FPS to cry out in agony as it briefly plummeted. Also, if you were thinking that the different characters and their respective ships would at least offer alternate dialogue throughout the game, you would be mistaken. There is reasonable justification for this, however, and that is that the game contains no story or dialogue whatsoever. To uncover Ghostblade's very simplistic premise, you'll need to look within the Dreamcast release's manual, or on the game's page of certain online stores. Powering up your ship to the maximum level can be achieved within the first minute of the first stage, and from that point onwards you'll never have to concern yourself with power-ups. Upon death, your ship will drop in power by some levels, but you can immediately reacquire lost upgrades during the window of invincibility granted upon resurrection. For all intents and purposes, the game might as well not even have any sort of weapon power-ups, as you'll always be able to deploy maximum firepower. One of the ways in which shooters traditionally challenge players is in their ability to recover from a mistake resulting in their death. This varies from game to game, with Gradius taking the most extreme approach by relinquishing the player of all upgrades they've obtained, leaving them incredibly vulnerable to the incoming onslaught. While not every shooter takes such a vicious approach, some sort of cost to your damage output is usually incurred upon death in order to incentivize playing with the aim of survival, rather than complete reckless abandon. At the same time, a game doesn't want its player to focus solely on subsistence, and will balance this out by rewarding those who partake in aggressive or more dangerous play through higher potential scores. A grazing system being a good example of this. This isn't to say that death in Ghostblade is completely inconsequential, as upon taking a hit and exploding, your combo count will reset to 0, which is an imperative tool in maximising your score, but it won't inhibit your ship's annihilative prowess. Scoring is based on a combo system here, reminiscent of the core mechanic found in the Donpachi series, although Ghostblade simplifies it somewhat. Destroying an enemy vessel or turret emplacement increases your combo count, which acts as a score multiplier. Not only does taking down enemies increase this multiplier, it also contributes to your score. Another way in which points are obtainable is through collecting the various icons left behind after enemies are disposed of, in addition to all the bonus points that are gained upon completion of a level. You are awarded these bonuses based on how many collectibles you acquired, the maximum combo you achieved, as well as how many surplus bombs and lives you have. The scoring system at work here may be a bit simplistic by the standards most shooters have come to utilising, but it does work in encouraging players to take risks and get aggressive with how they play in order to eke out every point possible. The effect that the combo system has on your overall score will force those who want to place highly on the online leaderboards to go out of their way to destroy everything in sight, rather than confine themselves to whichever part of the screen is the safest at any given moment. Furthermore, the cost of using bombs also provides the player with a dilemma in certain scenarios. If you appear to be trapped, do you use up a bomb and take the hit to your bonus total at the end? Or do you commit to pure evasion? Success in this situation will ensure greater bonus points, but at the risk of losing a life, as well as significantly more points being lost due to the combo resetting. It's this kind of decision making forced onto the player in the heat of battle that is Ghostblade's strongest feature, and while it can't make any claims to be the originator of any systems or mechanics in regards to scoring, it does utilise them in a clearly presented and accessible manner that is best suited to newcomers of the genre. Players who are less adept at shooters, but still want to improve upon their high score, can do so here while maintaining their focus on surviving and becoming better acquainted with the stage layouts, rather than concern themselves with the intricacies of a more complex scoring system. A practice mode, achievements, and a caravan-style score attack round out the package. The score attack mode is of particular note, as HuCast originally announced its inclusion prior to the release of the original Dreamcast version, but for some reason that feature didn't come to fruition, much to the rightful malign of those who bought the game. Graphically, Ghostblade is nothing to gawk at, but, like with almost every other facet of the game, it's passable, bordering on good. The sci-fi space setting has been done about 1 million times already, going on 2 million. But the game does add some unique flourishes here and there. Bright shades of pink are frequently used in the background to contrast the dark void of space, and there's plenty of fairly detailed scenery that varies across the stages. One nice touch is how the different layers of the background are utilised as a hiding spot for enemies yet to enter the battlefield. Some structures will have ships appear from underneath them before ascending to the plane where the action takes place. This serves as a good visual cue for players to memorise the locations of where certain ships will appear, making repeated runs easier, but only for those who've paid specific attention to these smaller details, rewarding the more keen-eyed player. I also particularly enjoy Stage 4's usage of cherry trees in bloom. I'm assuming this level takes place in some sort of artificial biosphere or facility that can support life, otherwise I'm unsure of how these trees have been successfully cultivated in the vacuum of space. As for the designs of the various ships and bosses, none of those are memorable in the slightest. but are all decently animated. Most importantly, the graphics never impede the player's vision in regards to dodging bullets. Enemy fire is displayed in the shades of blue, green and pink that feature so prominently in bullet hell games. The paintwork of enemy ships come in less vibrant tones though, as to not clash with the bullets, and explosion effects are kept condensed and brief for the same reason. While nothing about how the game looks is worth any real adoration, Ghostblade does look good enough that it gives off an illusion of having a greater production budget than the developers probably actually had, so they should be commended for that. The same comments can be made for the soundtrack, with nothing about it standing out to me in any way. The music doesn't complement or enhance the levels, and you could easily shuffle the stage themes around at random, and the music would have been just as fitting. The only exception to this is the Stage 5 theme. The level is titled Reality Breakdown, and the music starts at a much slower tempo, with long, drawn-out notes that generate an ominous and foreboding atmosphere, befitting of they lead up to the final boss. The HD port does contain an alternate soundtrack, so there's always the option to change it up if you tire of one or the other. While I can't call Ghostblade anything better than mediocre as a game, I think it does serve as a nice introductory work for the people who are looking at getting into shooters but are unsure of where to start. Ghostblade is easy. Like, really easy. As I said, I'm still very much a novice when it comes to my skills at these games, but I was able to 1cc Ghostblade on my first try on the normal difficulty, and then after turning the slowdown off and playing on hard, it took less than 10 attempts to 1cc that mode. With the game being as short as it is, this amounted to about 3 hours of play. Despite this being a bullet hell style shooter, the bullet patterns just never get that dense, and with the surplus of bombs that you can acquire by collecting the tech orb drops, you'll nearly always have an easy out to any undesirable situation that you find yourself in. The bosses in particular are far easier than the stages that precede them, level 3's being the most egregious example of this, with its excessively wide lanes of bullets that you can easily position yourself between. There is also a significant amount of bullet cancelling whenever you destroy certain ships. One of the keys to success in this game is learning which enemies will have their firepower dissipate upon destruction, the larger, more dangerous foes in most cases. You then just need the confidence to position yourself directly under these enemies and not concern yourself with any of the incoming plasma, knowing that their bullets will soon dematerialise. So, while I can't really recommend this game to anyone who's spent significant time with shooters, I can say that for people who've never played a game like this before and think it's something they'd like to try, then to give Ghostblade a go. While it doesn't have any great teaching tools, it's still a highly accessible take on the genre, with its low difficulty, simple scoring mechanics and virtually non-existent power-up system. New players can focus on getting to grips with the basics of movement, hitboxes, simple bullet patterns, bombing, and other fundamental skills that will aid them when it comes to bigger and better games. The only aspect of the game on offer for veteran players is in the online high scores and to spot some of the references to other shooters. Fortunately, not only is the game accessible in terms of design, but also in its cost. The Dreamcast and limited run physical PS4 releases aren't exactly cheap, but that's par for the course, whereas the game can be purchased digitally for less than £8. So, if you are new to the genre or see people asking for recommendations on what game to start with, I submit Ghostblade for your consideration. Just don't think that this game epitomises all of what shooters have to offer, because there's so much more out there. I hope you'll join me again for the next episode in this series, and thank you for taking the time to watch this video.